They tell us it never happened, that it was just a rumor, a misunderstanding, a conspiracy invented by people who look too deeply into the dark. But what if the reason you've never heard of Project Starlight is because you were never supposed to? What if parts of it are still buried, locked behind classified files, destroyed reports, and missing names? Because once you start tracing the fragments that remain, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Something doesn't add up, and the silence around it feels louder than any explanation ever could. Project Starlight didn't begin with a press conference or a public announcement. It surfaced in whispers, scattered through declassified documents, budget anomalies, and testimony that never fully made it into the record. References appear without context. Names are redacted. Dates don't align. Some researchers claim it began during a period of intense global tension, when governments were racing not just for weapons, but for control over perception, cognition, and human behavior itself. The idea wasn't domination through force, but influence without visibility, control without fingerprints. What makes Project Starlight disturbing isn't just what it allegedly studied, but how it was allegedly hidden. Funding streams seem to vanish into unrelated departments. Psychological research overlaps with defense contracts. Medical trials appear under benign names, only to disappear entirely a few years later. People connected to these programs reportedly signed lifelong silence agreements, while others simply vanished from the paper trail. No conclusions were ever published. No failures acknowledged. Just an abrupt end. Or at least, that's what the public record claims. According to leaked testimony and secondary accounts, Project Starlight may have focused on altered states of consciousness, not as therapy, not as exploration, but as a tool. The goal, some believe, was to understand how perception could be shifted under specific conditions: stress, isolation, light exposure, sound frequency, sleep deprivation. Individually, these are well-known factors, but combined, they may produce something far more unpredictable. A mind that doesn't just respond, but reshapes itself under pressure. One of the most unsettling patterns tied to Project Starlight is the recurring mention of light. Not metaphorical light, but literal exposure. Pulses, strobes, controlled environments where illumination was carefully manipulated. Some documents hint at attempts to synchronize brain activity through visual stimuli. Others suggest experiments on memory fragmentation, emotional detachment, and suggestibility. Nothing is confirmed, yet the consistency across unrelated sources is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Former insiders, speaking anonymously years later, describe an atmosphere of urgency and moral confusion. They claim many involved didn't fully understand the end goal. They were assigned small pieces of a much larger puzzle. Measure this response. Record that reaction. Adjust the environment. Ask the subject questions afterward. Over time, some reportedly realized the experiments weren't about healing or learning, but about control. About seeing how far the human mind could be pushed before it fractured, or worse, adapted. Then there are the alleged subjects. Officially, none are acknowledged. But patterns emerge when cross-referencing missing persons, sealed medical records, and institutional transfers. Some were volunteers, told they were part of sleep studies or cognitive research. Others may not have had a choice at all. Prison populations, psychiatric patients, marginalized individuals who wouldn't be missed if something went wrong. If Project Starlight existed, it didn't need consent. It needed silence. What truly fuels the controversy is the question of results. Programs don't disappear unless they fail, or unless they succeed too well. Some believe Project Starlight was shut down because the outcomes were unstable, unpredictable, dangerous. Others believe it was never shut down at all, only renamed, fragmented, and absorbed into other initiatives. If even a fraction of the theories are true, the research would be too valuable to abandon entirely. There are strange echoes of Project Starlight in modern times. Psychological operations that rely on sensory overload. Training programs that use disorientation as a tool. Even entertainment technologies that mimic some of the same visual and auditory patterns described in early reports. Are these connections real? Or are we projecting meaning where none exists? That question alone keeps investigators circling back, unable to fully walk away. Skeptics argue that Project Starlight is nothing more than a narrative stitched together from unrelated programs and human fear of the unknown. They point out the lack of hard evidence, the reliance on anonymous sources, the gaps in documentation. And they're not wrong. But history has shown that some of the most disturbing truths were once dismissed the same way. As rumors, as paranoia, as stories that made people uncomfortable. What remains most unsettling isn't what we know, but what we don't. Why were certain files destroyed while others survived? Why do some names appear repeatedly across unrelated projects before disappearing entirely? Why does the language used in surviving documents feel intentionally vague, as if designed to be misunderstood? These aren't answers. They're pressure points, hinting at something buried just beneath the surface. If Project Starlight never existed, then the silence surrounding it is meaningless. But if it did, even in a limited form, then the implications are difficult to ignore. It suggests a line was crossed quietly, experimentally, without public consent. A line where the human mind stopped being something to protect and became something to test, something to shape. And maybe the most disturbing possibility of all is this. If Project Starlight was real, and if parts of it continued under different names, then the experiment may not be over. It may simply have changed environments, changed methods, changed how visible it is, which raises a final question that no document seems willing to answer. Were the subjects confined to labs and facilities? Or are they walking around right now, unaware they were ever part of it at all? If Project Starlight truly ended, then what remains should be nothing more than a forgotten footnote, a closed chapter with no loose ends. But the silence feels intentional, almost rehearsed, as if the absence of answers is the final safeguard. Programs leave traces when they fail. They leave apologies, explanations, names. What Starlight left behind was something far stranger. Gaps, redactions, stories that stop mid-sentence. And maybe that's the point. Maybe whatever was uncovered was never meant to be understood all at once. Maybe it was meant to fade into doubt, to be dismissed as rumor, until only fragments remained. Because fragments are easy to ignore, easy to argue about, easy to forget. But when those fragments keep resurfacing across decades, across agencies, across disciplines, it becomes harder to believe they're meaningless. The most unsettling thought isn't that Project Starlight existed, but that it may have succeeded quietly. That it proves something about the human mind that was too powerful, too dangerous, to acknowledge publicly. Knowledge like that doesn't disappear. It gets archived, rebranded, buried under new language and new objectives, waiting for the right moment to be used again. So the question isn't whether Project Starlight was real. The question is why so much effort went into making sure we'd never be certain. Because uncertainty keeps people calm. It keeps them debating instead of demanding answers. And as long as doubt exists, the truth can stay exactly where it is, hidden in plain sight.